Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Nutrition Connection podcast, the show where science meets storytelling. I'm your host, Dr. Kristen Hicks-Roof, researcher, dietitian, and lifelong advocate for the power of nutrition, health, and wellness. Each episode, I sit down with dietitians and nutrition experts from the food and healthcare systems, really bringing forward how their work touches nearly every sector of people's lives. So, whether you're a student, a seasoned professional, or someone just interested in food, health, and wellness, this podcast is just for you. The views, thoughts, and comments on this podcast do not reflect those of my employers nor the employers of my guests. So let's go ahead and get connected. Today, I'm really excited to bring on the podcast guest, Dr. Lauri Wright. She's the Associate Professor of the Department of Community Health Sciences at University of South Florida. She's also the Director of Nutrition Programs and a really fun title. She's a former past president of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, which is cool. Welcome to the podcast, Lauri.
Thank you, Kristen. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so Lori and she was actually my boss at one point, and she's such a mentor and leader in the field. So I'm excited for you all to tune in and hear about her story into where she's, gotten and where she is today. But Lori, before we begin, what inspired you and actually made you want to become a nutrition professional?
Well, it was very interesting because I'm a first generation college student. When I decided I was going to go to college, I talked to my dad, and all he knew was for a woman in college was to be a nurse or to be a nurse or a teacher. And interestingly enough, there was kind of a glut of teachers at that point, and I always loved hospitals, so I decided I'll be a nurse. And it was my sophomore year at Ohio State that I took a nutrition class as part of the curriculum, and I was just like the light opened up, and I had been an athlete and kind of experimented. I was also a very chubby kid, so had in early high school had lost a lot of weight, not in the right way, and also had seen how I ate influenced how I performed in my sport. So when I took a class on nutrition and thought, this is amazing, I went to the professor, I'll never forget, and I said, this is so interesting. Is there like a profession with this? And she said, yes, you could be a dietitian, and Ohio State has 2 programs. You can, go to our program. You have to do this little thing called an internship afterwards. Don't worry about that. And that's how I got into dietetics.
That's so crazy. I was just telling someone the other day, it's so fun. And I do miss this part of teaching when I was a professor, when you're teaching the students and this light bulb goes off, whether it's a behavior change at home or a career change. And it's so empowering. I feel like as a teacher that you're like, you help to transform that life. And someone did that to you to even bring you in the profession, which is super cool.
Absolutely.
And
It's so rewarding.
I'm actually surprised you didn't say the Ohio State, Lori. Come on.
Well, I was a little depressed after last weekend. I'm eating a lot of crow, so, yeah, I it's
Oh,
in my heart.
that's so funny. So let's discuss your journey. So you decided you want to become a dietitian, even though you didn't really know that it was a field. What kind of jobs have you had and where did it bring you to where you are today?
When I was at Ohio State, I decided, that I wanted to do pediatric dietetics, and, that first summer after I graduated, before starting my internship, I worked at a children's hospital, nationwide children's hospital, and I was a diet tech, and I had the position where we would do select menus for oncology and for burns. And if I tell you I went home crying every day, I'm not exaggerating. I was too emotional for pediatrics. I admire pediatric dietitians so much, but it just wasn't for me because I couldn't separate myself. Um, And that worked out okay because my internship was actually in the VA hospital. And that's something else I like to tell people. I didn't know what a dietitian was. And I also didn't get an internship when I applied the first round. And I think that's important to know because even I think I've had a pretty amazing career and I was an alternate. I was an alternate for a university hospital in Cleveland. And a week before the internship was to start, I got a phone call from the VA, which is the sister internship through Case Western Reserve. And they said, we had an intern drop out. She got pregnant. Thank you. And would you like the position? And I didn't even hesitate, Kristen. I said yes. And I drove up the next day, did the paperwork. I started the program the next Monday. And I think that's something that has really marked my career, made it a bit different. And I would say a bit exciting is I don't say no. I go for things. Just do it. That's kind of my tagline. I didn't even think about the consequences. I just said yes. I needed an internship and I was going to do it no matter what.
That's so funny. I was actually almost in the same boat, which I didn't know this about you. So I didn't get matched first round either. My grades were not great, but I knew I was a go-getter, you know? And I remember getting a call at like 2 o'clock in the morning. Still not sure why that DI director was up at 2 o'clock in the morning. But they called me saying, "Hey, we have a spot at Texas A&M University, Kingsville." And I was like, "I've never even heard of this city, but yes, I'm in. I will fill out
I'm
all
there.
my paperwork and I will move there." You
Uh,
know, so I think you never really know what doors are going to open, and so you just kind of got to take it in stride. So you did your internship at the VA. What kind of positions have you had in between to where you are now?
Columbus has, Ohio in general has a lot of internship programs. And so the program, the state is pretty saturated. I wanted nothing more than to stay in Columbus, Ohio, where I grew up and work at one of the hospitals. And it didn't work out like that. There weren't any positions. But I had that network from being a VA graduate and I was going through a newsletter. It was Christmas time, and alumni of our program had written in little blurbs. And this one uh, alumni wrote about how she was the clinical nutrition manager at Tampa VA. She was adjuncting at the community college, and she was doing research. She had a research project. And I was so impressed. She was doing what I wanted to do. I wanted to teach. I wanted to do research, but I wanted to be a clinician. So, and I know people laugh, but I was a really shy person at that point in my life. But I just picked up the phone and I called her and I said, I was really impressed. And if you ever have an opening, I'd love you for you to consider me. And she goes, well, actually, we just got approved for a temporary position. We have two dietitians going out on maternity leave. Once again, pregnancy helped me. And would you like the position? And I said on the phone, yes.
Wow.
And 2 weeks later, I was working at the Tampa VA. I was in general medicine. Um, and I loved general medicine. I never was bored because every day there was a new challenge. I also, I'm not one that just sits in a position. I always want to find that next challenge. So I specialized in infectious disease. The AIDS epidemic was really starting to peak. It was before we had a lot of the medications. So our patients were literally dying of malnutrition. And I did research. I had the second, not the first, article on malnutrition and AIDS, and I did some other research projects. I formed a network of dietitians working in AIDS. It's kind of like a predecessor of a DPG, but just to support one another and really just loved that specialty. Got into hepatitis and liver disease as a result too. So always wanting to do a little bit more. But in the back of my mind, I had always wanted to be a professor. But so I loved practicing, and I never wanted to be one of those professors that hadn't practiced. I wanted to have that experience to share. Um, so I was I was about 10, at least 10 years into my practice, and decided to go for my PhD. Was working on my PhD when I got a phone call from across Tampa Bay, St. Petersburg, Bay Pines, VA, and they wanted to start their own dietetic internship. And they had heard that I was interested, and they asked me if I'd like to come interview, and I got that position. So I got to build an internship program from scratch, which was, I love building, and that's kind of where my that started for me, an architect of dietetics programs. So I did that for a couple of years. I finished out 20 years in the VA, and
Wow.
finished my PhD, and took a position at University of North Florida. That's not when we met, but we I ran the internship and the masters for a couple of years, 2 years. But this was one of those times when work-life balance got the best of me. And then you probably can relate with 3 girls too, but I was a single mom, and it was just, I was paying students to take my daughter to school. It was hard. So there was a position at University of South Florida, and I g I went back to Tampa, so that I could have some of that support, but still be in academia. So I built at USF, I built the minor in nutrition, and then I built a dietetic internship. So, I really, I loved it, but I'd taken it about as far as I could. And then UNF called me and said, "Hey, we just got approval to start a doctorate in clinical nutrition, the DCN, the second in the nation." And I was intrigued because I have to say at USF, it's a research one. It is very high expectations. And it was tough those first years there, getting tenured, and but I learned so much about research. I don't necessarily have the research pedigree that some people do with the postdoc and everything, but what I lack in pedigree, I make up in drive. And I learned a lot from working with DRPH and PhD students, what the difference was. So I had that experience to take back to UNF and start the DCN program. And did the DCN program for almost 7 years. Also was department chair when I got to hire you, our best faculty in my time. Um, and so it was wonderful. But again, once again, I didn't love being the department chair. And I know that about myself now, that I'm not an administrator. Where I get my passion is building, being engaged with my students, with the community and practice. So um started the Center for Nutrition and Food Security, had like my fourth child, which was the Meals on Wings program, where we recovered food not used in hospitals, packaged them into healthy meals, and delivered them to homebound seniors. And especially Meals on Wings played such an important role during COVID, when so many of our older adults um, couldn't access food. And so, that program is still going under the leadership of Megan Nimchek and Dr. Jen Ross, and very proud, still very much miss the program, but, happy that, that it's still thriving up in Jacksonville. But again, I like new challenges. And so USF called me, and they said, "Hey, Lori, we want to expand the nutrition offerings here." And my husband really loved Tampa. He missed being in Tampa. I love Tampa. One of my daughters, my adult daughters, was practicing as a dietitian back in Tampa. So I thought, this is a good time for us. So we moved back to Tampa, and in my 2 years back here at USF, I've built a new dietetics, or I'm sorry, a new nutrition concentration for community nutrition for non-dietitians. I built a new major, undergraduate major, and then I reorganized our internship into a graduate program, which is a much more flexible, puts the training at the graduate level, and really fits the needs of USF, Tampa Bay. So I've been busy in my 2 years back, but again, I'm getting to do the things I love, which are building programs.
Yeah, and it's funny because sometimes we kind of learn as we navigate through the waters, right? Like, and I feel like there's opportunity, but we will always face challenges. I know you and I had the conversation when I was having my first and my second daughter when I was at University of North Florida. I'm like, I need family. Like I need to, be able to move back to Arizona to be close to family. And you face similar struggles. And so I think it's nice, especially as a women dominated profession for the most part, that we equally understand that work and life, there is a balance, but sometimes they take a very unique, unexpected prioritization in our life, and we don't know when that's going to happen either.
And I think and I think you've done some work on this, but you know, I remember when I was a young, just finishing at Ohio State, and I knew I wanted to one day be a professor, but I looked around, and of all the professors, nobody was married, no one had family except one. There was one dietitian that she had worked for 20 years in the university hospital. She taught MNT. She had 2 kids. She was very inspirational. And I want it all. And we've had to navigate and push through some of those old ways. And sometimes it's the people within, it's women within the system that are harder on the younger women. And we need to continue to change that. I mean, COVID taught us that we can have balance, I think. Um, and it is really, really important that we give each other grace and support, so that people can have that balance.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. So you've kind of talked about your history, but give a little bit more details for those of you, for those of the listeners who maybe don't really know what being a professor is all about. Like, what do you do in your current role, like day to day or month to month?
um, you know, I really love the flexibility that I have, and I I always say I'm not artistic at all, but I definitely, when it comes to classes, that's where I get creative, and then I'm trying to find that perfect example from practice that will be that aha moment for students. Or um, even the research that I do, I want it to be meaningful. There's a place for all types of research, but the kind that excites me is when we're actually going in and intervening and looking at changes that we can make in people's lives and empower them to be healthier through nutrition. And so, a day will look like, grading, but then it's preparing for a presentation or a class. Right now, I'm really busy in preparing for spring semester, um, and, you know, upgrading those classes. No class, I never just relaunch a class. I'm always upgrading and making it better. And because I've reorganized the dietetics program, the students have very different needs than the traditional dietetics student that had undergrad dietetics courses. So now I'm looking at, how can I build that foundation? How can I scaffold experiences to prepare them for the supervised practice and such. So, we're doing a lot of creative things. I mean, some days I'm out with my students at a scaffolding experience, delivering meals for Meals on Wheels or going to Feeding Tampa Bay, and kind of translating and being there with them. Um, Today I'm at home. I'm preparing because I'm having students over for a holiday dinner, you
Oh,
know.
that's fun.
But I'm always looking at ways that we can, um, you know, really build our students up and give them the experiences that will make them the best practitioners. And I'm so lucky with the network. And we were talking about this before we went on air. Um, I think the most valuable part to me of being involved in leadership, leadership, um, is that network. I just have met so many wonderful dietitians through the years of volunteering and working. And when I need that expert on GLPs, I can reach out and say, "Would you record a lecture for me?" Because that's not my specialty, um and I love that networking opportunity. I'm working on a process, formalizing a process right now for internationally trained dietitians. You know, internationally trained medical professionals are really treated poorly when they come to our countries. They have to start over.
Right.
And we've all met nurses in the States that were physicians in other countries. So I've been working with internationally trained dietitians to um, tailor clinical experiences, develop modules to get them prepared on like federal nutrition programs and such. And I'm coordinating with a large hospital system to get work visas for them and get them a job opportunity after they get registered. So I'm so excited, and I'm actually at the hospital system. I'm working with a former intern of mine,
Oh, that's
years ago,
crazy.
but it's just that network, and that you can help a lot of people, patients, dietitians, the community, with that network and that, I don't know, passion to do things for people. Yeah.
Well, I don't think you're low on passion by any means. And I do think not only the network, but then the building and creating, right? Whether it's creating an opportunity for international or creating new programs, like that's kind of ingrained in your blood. So my
Mhm.
next question is I actually want you to tie in some of your Ghana work because I think it's super cool for our listeners to hear about all the research that you do and how you take research and translate it. Because the question is, how does scientific evidence kind of fuel your impact? And so I want you to like think about the Ghana work and maybe you can showcase some of that.
Um, I heck yeah, grew up in the Midwest. If you would have told my 20-something-year-old self that I would one day live in Africa, I would never have believed you. Shy, risk averse, that was me when I was young. But fast forward, listening to a pediatric dietitian talk about assessment and severe acute malnutrition. Went up to her afterwards. I said, "Marie, what you're doing is so impressive. Do you ever have opportunities for dietitians to go with you?" And she said, "Actually, we're headed to the Dominican Republic next month. You want to go?" Yes.
Why
And
not?
that's where my international work really started, was a malnutrition clinic in Dominican. I've worked in Uganda, South Africa, Belize, India. But I think my the longevity of work has been in Ghana, West Africa. Went with faculty first at Iowa State University, and I was so impressed with the caliber of their dietitians. But yet, Kristen, they don't have the resources that
Right.
we just take for granted. And it's like access to the terminology, the international dietetics and nutrition terminology. that is cost prohibitive. So how could I help them, you know, with providing some of those resources? So I have pretty much gone to Ghana every year for the past decade. I missed 1 year for COVID, but I always do training, and then I believe it's more helpful if you train and then you go into the hospitals with the dietitians and help them implement it into their setting. Um, and then, I applied for a Fulbright. I made it to the finals, didn't get it. That's okay, 'cause, I believed in what I had proposed in the Fulbright application. It was the right time in our life, and so my husband and I sold our house, we sold our cars, and we moved to West Africa for 6 months, and, helping them with accreditation, recognizing that they are practicing at such a high level, and so helping them get, accreditation. I just got back from, in November from the site visit. So it's finally come from my time several years ago helping them write their self-study to actually the site visit in July. They will get their announcement, and
That is
in
so
all
cool.
likelihood will be the first program in all of Africa to be accredited in dietetics. So it's so exciting, but it's a privilege, and I learned so much from them because there's a science and an art, and sometimes I'm afraid to say that to, certain people, but we know the science, and, we have to practice it with evidence-based, data, but when you don't have those resources, when you don't have punks for parenteral nutrition and their gut isn't working, how do you feed them? And so that's the art that I talk about, where they learn what they know. They don't have regular protein powders, or they're very expensive. So they use ground fish powder for protein
Wow.
supplements. And so, that has it's made me such a better clinician. And hopefully I've helped build up those dietitians with giving them the resources and such.
Yeah, that's so cool. I remember you saying there's something special about the hospital you worked at too. There's like a fun fact with the hospital. What is
Okay.
it?
It's a nutrition geek fun fact. So, um, one of the hospitals in the capital of Ghana is Accra. That's the capital. The hospital is Princess Marie Louise Hospital, and Dr. Carolyn, I think it's Jenkins, was the physician who coined the term kwashiorkor.
That's what it
And so
was. Yeah.
at that hospital is still the largest malnutrition hospital in Western, Africa. So they treat acute inpatient and outpatient. And we go, like when I take students, we're practicing in the hospital. They coin kwashiorkor. There's a statue that of the physician, and we're still practicing there. And it's just,
Yeah,
that to
that's
me is
cool.
so cool. But he
Exactly. I
doesn't
mean,
love the term kwashiorkor anyways,
right. So if you were to boil it down, what would be your most favorite or most proud of impact you've had in your profession?
Um, that's really tough. You know, the students that have gone on and grown into amazing dietitians, including my own daughter. Um, the Meals on Wings program, feeding underserved older adults, and it's made such an impact. And then just being able to build up the dietitians in Ghana, I think it would probably be Meals on Wings.
Yeah.
I think that would be my biggest impact.
It was always fun. I remember my time at University of North Florida, and at one point, I had a 6-month-old, and you had asked me to volunteer for Meals on Wings. And I'm like, yeah, I could do it. I strapped her on me, and we went in, and we were making meals. And you just saw, there's something so special about dietitians when they're in their zone. You just see this like illumination, excitement, passion, desire to help people. And you definitely have that. So if you were to think of, suggestions or tips of someone who may be interested in a career path like yours or a position like yours, what suggestions or tips would you have for them?
Um, you know, I think number one is e- whatever you go into, make sure you have a passion for it and let that fuel you. And you're not going to go wrong. I mean, there's going to be stops and starts. Nothing has gone perfectly for me either. It's not like it's been a blessed, um, perfect career. But when you just kind of, when you believe in it, you brush yourself up and you get back up and you keep going. And so let passion guide you. Don't don't you know disregard certain areas as like, oh, I'll never work. Food service is one of those that a lot of dietitians don't like. I didn't like it. Um but you know I always got the concept, of that we need to understand this. But when I did Meals on Wings, I was designing a kitchen. I was so grateful that I had that background, that even out of those recesses way back in my brain, I had that foundation that I could do this. I could run a whole meal program. And E and and because I was so passionate about our mission, I enjoyed that. It's like, what food did we get in? What meals can we make? What do we need to order? And, so don't disregard certain areas, like, I'm only gonna be this. Be open. The dietetics is the most diverse field. I always say if you get bored in dietetics, that's your fault, because there are so many exciting areas that I have had, I think, 3 careers within dietetics. I think
Oh,
as a
yeah.
clinical, as a kind of public health community and global, and then a professor. So, I mean, it's just, but it's letting your passion move you forward, and don't say no. Go for things. Just go for it, because you'll never regret going for something. The only thing you're going to regret is sitting back and letting it that opportunity pass you by.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. When you first talked about food service, all I thought of was can sizes and cup sizes, and I don't ever want to remember that for my exam. But you're right in the sense of our profession is so diverse, and that's really one of the core reasons why I started this podcast, is to showcase all the different areas that nutrition plays in the food space, the health, education, right? It's across every sector we impact public health. So I think that is so important, is you never know your next opportunity. Take it. Maybe you'll like it, maybe you don't, but you'll learn something from the experience and you'll carry that with you no matter where you go.
I think we're always afraid of making mistakes. Like, well, if I take that position, is it a mistake? And I don't think there are necessarily mistakes, except maybe not going for something and staying stagnant, I think is a mistake. At least in my life, that would be a mistake. But you learn from everything, and some opportunities work out better than others, but you learn, and then that all becomes the person that you are. You're always evolving, and part of that evolution is these chances, these opportunities that you take.
Yeah, it's been fun as I've been interviewing dietitians. Everyone's like, "Oh, I have a very untraditional career path." I'm like, "Yet every single one of you say the same thing, right?" You
Yeah.
never know the way that the wind's gonna blow you. So, all right, my final question: if you had a crystal ball, what do you think is coming next in nutrition? And it can be absolutely anything.
I think we have some very powerful momentum moving forward with to claim the food as medicine space. I think just the stars are aligning. M- Food as medicine is what dietitians do, and it's what we've always done. But now it's so popular and a lot of people are trying to own it. But even all the meetings, whether it's been meetings here on my own campus or meetings with, you know, the White House when I was president, White House staffers, national task forces that I've been on at representing the academy, there's this recognition finally that it's dietitians that are necessary, that are the drivers of food as medicine. And food as medicine, nutrition is what's going to impact. It's going to have the biggest impact on health. Um, and, we can't stop. You can't think that politically, oh, we're not going to move anywhere. Actually, there's a lot of passion right now, whether it be evidence based or not, there's a lot of passion. So let's be at the table and inform with evidence, with experience. We have the Medical Nutrition Therapy Bill and the Treat and Reduce Obesity Act. I think and we're almost at the finish line. We have the licensure compact for dietetics that in 1 year, we over doubled the number of states we needed for this compact. That's the passion behind this. So all of this is aligning to really move dietitians and nutrition forward. And I think we're going to be much bigger players. I remember nowadays, you never heard the term dietitian in like TV, movies. I was watching a TV show the other day, and more and more, the Pit, Doc, they're all saying, "Oh, we need to refer him to the dietitian."
Love that.
And I just think on social media, we're out there. We're starting to command the respect that we deserve. And the bottom line is, yes, it's great to have respect. That we want respect, but we want to be able to use our tools, our strengths to help make people's lives better. And at the end of the day, that's what we're fighting for. And I think we're getting there. I think that for my daughter, for the students I'm training right now, that this world is going to be much more nutrition centric and acknowledge the power of nutrition and dietitians, than what and that I think I can retire with ease over.
Yeah, and I like what you said that it's not just bringing nutrition forward. Like, yes, that's super important, but it's equally bringing dietitians forward in the nutrition space, right? We command the nutrition, food, and health. And so that how do we continue to have a seat at the table and be the leaders and be at least part of the discussion? And that's a big step in the right direction, especially when you think about, where we came from, where dietitians were maybe mainly just in the back of the kitchen,
You're
right? And
nuts.
we've come so far to being in the media and being in policy and being in food and health and education. So it's really exciting, what we have to come. So thank you so much, Dr. Lauri Wright.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you having you on the show. And for all the listeners, stay tuned for the next podcast.
Thank you, Kristen.
Okay.